This 16-year-old Frank William Abagnale was wanted by state police and FBI. You might not recognize the name Frank William Abagnale Jr., but if you watch the film Catch Me If You Can starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, you've caught a peek of his life story. While Steven Spielberg's film was dramatized for cinematic impact, the story of Frank Abagnale Jr.'s journey from a con man to a renowned fraud specialist is based on facts. It will be great if you like and share this video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell icon next to it to get notified when we add new interesting videos in the future. Now let's get back to the story. Frank Abagnale Jr. was born in Bronxville, New York in 1948 to Frank and Paulette Abagnale. Frank had a happy upbringing. He grew up in a stable environment with loving and caring parents. Every night, his father would kiss him goodnight and tell him, "I love you." In a world of fathers, Frank defines himself as having a daddy, not your average childhood for someone on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. While most 15 to 20-year-olds are graduating from high school, attending college, or entering the workforce, Frank toured the world, committing forgeries and check fraud, and finally spent time in prison. Frank Abagnale was a well-known check forger, imposter, and scam man. He mostly committed his offenses between the ages of 15 and 21. He was detained several times in several countries, spending 6 months in a French jail, 6 months in a Swedish prison, and 4 years in a U.S. prison in Atlanta, Georgia. Frank's criminal career began when he was 15 and committed credit card theft on his father. Frank Sr. had given his son a credit card to buy car supplies. Frank and the gas station attendant established a system to falsely charge Frank Sr. for products in exchange for cash, which he used to support his dating life. The wrongdoing was not detected until Frank Sr. received a charge for many $1,000s in products. Frank's parents' marriage deteriorated during his adolescence and they eventually chose to split. Frank Jr. was kept in the dark about the divorce until the day it was finalized. Frank was summoned to the courthouse from school. The court presiding over the divorce instructed Frank Jr., 16, to select which parent he wished to live with. Frank fled in tears to Manhattan, New York, unable to choose between his parents. When Frank arrived in New York, he landed a job at $1.50 per hour, which was the minimum wage at the time. Frank modifies his driver's license, altering his birth year from 1948 to 1938, believing that his modest pay is due to his age. Frank had always seemed to be older than his age. He was 6 feet tall and had premature graying of his hair, so he could easily pass for a 20-something. Unsatisfied and earning little more than minimum wage, Frank turned to check fraud to boost his income. Frank's first method was simple. He would create bank accounts in his name, overdraw them, and then disappear when the bank requested repayment. Frank first passed checks in the range of $25 to $50. Frank created a scheme to pass inspections on a much larger scale by acting as a pilot with little regard for the implications. Why? I thought I could walk into any hotel, bank, or business in the country and cash a check. Frank wrote in his biography, Catch Me If You Can, "Airline pilots are folks to look up to and respect. Men who can be trusted, men with money, and you wouldn't expect an airline pilot to be a local, let alone a check swindler." Frank needed to dress the role before he could carry out his plan. Frank phoned Pan America Airlines, pretending to be a pilot who had misplaced his uniform. Frank was able to swindle his way into a replacement outfit for a small charge, which was invoiced to the airline. Frank disguised himself as a Pan Am pilot by wearing the outfit. In addition to passing checks in considerably larger quantities by acting as a pilot, the bonus of being allowed to fly for free, known as deadheading, came with the job. While Frank never went on Pan American, he did deadhead on other airlines, allowing his check fraud operation to travel the world. Frank Abagnale was a master of deceit. He could easily change his name and persona. Frank had impersonated a doctor, a lawyer, and a sociology professor over 5 years. Frank's imitation of a doctor was unintentional. He was asked about his employment when filing out a rental application, and he replied, "Pediatric doctor." Unbeknownst to Frank, the same unit housed a real doctor. Unable to avoid the pediatrician, Frank visited the nearby hospital and used its library to bolster his allegations. Frank did not undertake any genuine medical procedures, since he was aware that doing so may result in his death. Frank abandoned his alter ego and fled the neighborhood. Frank then went to Louisiana and pretended to be a lawyer. Frank passed the state's bar exam while posing as a lawyer. The state of Louisiana authorized testers 3 chances at the exam at the time. Frank employed the process of elimination and passed the Louisiana bar test on his 3rd attempt in 9 weeks. A fantastic achievement, given Frank only had a 10th grade high school education at the time. Frank wore various hats between 1964 and 1969. He is accused of stealing $2.5 million and traveling over 1 million miles as a deadhead, for which he was named to the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. From the age of 16 until his apprehension at the age of 20, Frank was relentlessly sought by the FBI, state, and local law enforcement. Frank, at the age of 20, concluded that life on the run was stressful and chose to retire to France. Frank moved to Montpellier, the place where his parents met at the conclusion of World War II. Frank was identified while grocery shopping by the stewardess's ex-girlfriend, who had seen his wanted poster. His ex-girlfriend called the cops to report his presence. Frank's sophisticated cat-and-mouse game came to an end when he was apprehended by Montpellier police on an Interpol order for offenses committed in Sweden. At the time of his arrest, Frank was sought in every state in the United States, as well as in 26 foreign nations for extradition. France declined to fulfill the Interpol warrant. Instead of prosecuting Frank in France for crimes done there, Frank was found guilty of forgery and sentenced to a year in jail in Perpignan's house of arrest after a 2-day trial. Frank was imprisoned in Perpignan for 6 months of his 1-year sentence. Frank was imprisoned in appalling conditions. His little cell had no power, toilet, or wash basin, and he had to relieve himself through a hole in the floor. Frank weighed 198 pounds when he entered Perpignan prison and exited extremely starved, weighing barely 109 pounds. After 6 months, Frank was transported to a Swedish jail to complete the balance of his term. While in Sweden, Italy requested extradition. However, the Swedish judge instead collaborated with the FBI to have Frank's passport withdrawn for him to be deported to the United States. Frank Abagnale spent 5 years of his 12-year term in prison. He was released on the condition that he assist the FBI in its investigation of fraud and scam artists without compensation, which he agreed to. Even after completing his sentence, Frank continued to work for the FBI without compensation. Frank also reimbursed the stolen $2.5 million, even though it was not a condition of his parole or probation. Abagnale is also well known for his 1971 Jail Breakout. The United States Marshal forgot to provide Abagnale's detention commitment to the jail when transferring him to custody. This was uncommon to the administration, and the guards assumed he was a prison inspector sent by the FBI. Using his knowledge to his advantage, he utilized his phone call to persuade his acquaintance Jean Sebring to create a business card to support his tale. Sebring replaced a business card supplied to her by FBI agent Joe Shea with Abagnale's details. When Abagnale was brought, he informed the guards that he was an FBI inspector and that he needed to leave the prison to speak with his colleague FBI agent. The guards chuckled and boasted about how they had known all along and were impossible to mislead, eventually letting Abagnale exit the prison. He was finally remanded to prison for 4 years, but after his release, he attempted to change his life. Following his release, Frank contacted a bank with an offer to teach its employees how to recognize swindlers and phony checks. Frank discovers that he has more worth as a security specialist than he did as a crook. He now works as a security consultant, providing advice and experience to banks, law enforcement agencies, and other organizations. His fraud prevention programs are used by over 14,000 financial institutions, corporations, and law enforcement agencies. Frank continues to consult with the FBI without salary or compensation for travel expenses. Frank's tale makes it clear that he does not want to be remembered for his adolescent acts, but the family he has established subsequently. His biggest success, he says, is his wife and 3 boys. Frank's metamorphosis from conman to renowned security expert is an inspiring story for someone who made a mistake, learned from it, and utilized what he learned to help build a better society. He worked as an FBI consultant and speaker before launching his private financial fraud consulting firm, Abagnale & Associates. In addition, he appeared in the film Catch Me If You Can, which was based on his life. His net worth is at $10 million. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share the video. Please leave your thoughts in the comments section. Thank you, and see you on the next one. Bye.